Habituation and sensitization are the unseen forces that shape our daily experiences, influencing how we respond to everything from annoying noises to life-threatening dangers. These twin psychological phenomena are crucial because they affect how we adapt to our environment, making some stimuli virtually invisible while others become overwhelming. As we delve into the fascinating world of habituation and sensitization, get ready to uncover the surprising ways your brain is constantly recalibrating your reality. As we explore these concepts, it's essential to understand that they are two sides of the same coin, representing our brain's ability to adapt to stimuli. Habituation is the process by which our brain decreases its response to a stimulus after repeated presentations, essentially becoming less sensitive to it. On the other hand, sensitization is the opposite phenomenon, where our brain becomes more responsive to a stimulus, often due to its association with a significant event or emotional experience. One of the major psychological theories that explains habituation and sensitization is the Pavlovian conditioning theory, developed by Ivan Pavlov. This theory posits that our brains learn to associate certain stimuli with specific responses, which can lead to either habituation or sensitization. For example, imagine you're walking through a city and initially notice the sound of car horns. At first, it's annoying, but after a while you stop paying attention to it. This is an example of habituation. However, if one of those car horns is particularly loud and startles you, your brain might become sensitized to the sound, making you more responsive to it in the future. My colleagues in the field have also explored the role of dopamine in habituation and sensitization. Research suggests that dopamine release plays a crucial role in the sensitization process, as it enhances the brain's response to novel or significant stimuli. This is why we often see increased dopamine activity in response to rewarding or threatening stimuli, which can lead to sensitization. A significant research finding that sheds light on habituation and sensitization is the work of psychologist Robert Rescorla, who demonstrated that the context in which a stimulus is presented can greatly influence whether habituation or sensitization occurs. For instance, if you are exposed to a loud noise in a safe environment, you are more likely to habituate to it. However, if the same noise is presented in a threatening or uncertain context, your brain might become sensitized to it. In clinical settings, understanding habituation and sensitization is essential for developing effective therapeutic approaches. For example, exposure therapy, which involves gradually exposing individuals to feared stimuli, relies on the principles of habituation to reduce anxiety responses. On the other hand, cognitive behavioral therapy often aims to address sensitized responses to certain stimuli by reframing their meaning and reducing their emotional impact. In everyday life, habituation and sensitization play a significant role in shaping our experiences. For instance, have you ever noticed how you can get used to a strong smell after being in a room for a while? That's habituation at work. However, if you associate that smell with a negative experience, such as getting sick, your brain might become sensitized to it, making you more responsive to the smell in the future. For instance, consider the experience of moving to a new home near a busy highway. Initially, the sound of traffic might be overwhelming, but over time, you'll likely find yourself becoming less bothered by it. This is habituation in action, where your brain has learned to filter out the constant noise. However, if one day a car crashes on that highway outside your window, the sudden shock and emotional arousal can lead to sensitization. This example highlights how context and emotional experience can significantly influence whether habituation or sensitization occurs. My colleagues in the field have also explored the neural mechanisms underlying habituation and sensitization, particularly in relation to the brain's stress response system. Research suggests that the amygdala, a region critical for processing emotions, plays a key role in sensitization. When we encounter a threatening or significant stimulus, the amygdala releases stress hormones like cortisol, which enhances our emotional arousal and memory consolidation. This can lead to long-term changes in how we respond to similar stimuli in the future. A notable controversy in the field revolves around the concept of fear extinction versus fear reduction. Some researchers argue that habituation and sensitization are distinct processes from fear extinction, which involves the active suppression of a previously learned fear response. Others propose that habituation is, in fact, a form of fear reduction, where the brain gradually decreases its response to a feared stimulus over time. This debate highlights the complexities of understanding how our brains adapt to and process threatening information. In terms of therapeutic applications, understanding habituation and sensitization can inform the development of more effective treatments for anxiety disorders. For example, exposure therapy can be tailored to take into account the role of context and emotional arousal in shaping habituation and sensitization. By gradually exposing individuals to feared stimuli in a controlled and safe environment, therapists can help them develop more adaptive responses and reduce their anxiety. Another significant research finding comes from the field of psychophysiology, where scientists have used techniques like skin conductance and heart rate monitoring to study habituation and sensitization. These studies have shown that physiological responses, such as increased sweatiness or heart rate, can be reliable indicators of whether an individual is habituating or sensitizing to a particular stimulus. This has important implications for the development of more objective measures of anxiety and fear responses. To illustrate this concept further, consider the experience of watching a scary movie. Initially, you might feel a strong physiological response, such as increased heart rate and skin conductance, in response to frightening scenes. However, as the movie progresses and you become more accustomed to the scares, your physiological response may decrease, indicating habituation. But if the movie includes a particularly shocking or disturbing scene, your brain may become sensitized, leading to an increased physiological response to subsequent scary scenes. As we delve deeper into the complexities of habituation and sensitization, it's essential to explore how these processes interact with our emotional experiences. One crucial aspect is the role of emotional arousal in shaping our responses to stimuli. When we encounter a stimulus that elicits strong emotions, such as fear or excitement, our brain releases neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine, which enhance our attention and memory consolidation. This can lead to a process called emotional conditioning, where we associate the stimulus with the emotional response, making it more likely to trigger a similar response in the future. A notable example of this is the work of psychologist Joseph Ledoux, who studied the neural mechanisms underlying fear conditioning. His research showed that the amygdala plays a critical role in processing emotional information and associating it with specific stimuli. This can lead to long-term changes in how we respond to those stimuli, even if they no longer pose an actual threat. For instance, someone who has experienced a traumatic event, such as a car accident, may become sensitized to the sound of screeching tires or the smell of gasoline, triggering a strong emotional response even years later. In everyday life, understanding how habituation and sensitization interact with our emotions can help us better navigate situations that might otherwise feel overwhelming. For example, consider someone who has recently experienced a breakup and finds themselves constantly checking their ex-partner's social media profiles. Initially, this behavior might be driven by curiosity or a desire for closure, but over time, it can lead to sensitization, where the individual becomes increasingly emotionally reactive to any mention or reminder of their ex-partner. By recognizing this pattern, they can take steps to limit their exposure and engage in activities that promote habituation, such as practicing mindfulness or focusing on new hobbies. The interplay between habituation and sensitization also has significant implications for therapeutic approaches, particularly in the treatment of anxiety disorders. Techniques like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, often aim to help individuals develop more adaptive responses to stimuli that previously triggered strong emotional reactions. By gradually exposing themselves to feared stimuli in a controlled environment, individuals can learn to habituate to the associated emotions and develop more constructive coping mechanisms. Furthermore, recent advances in neuroimaging techniques have allowed researchers to study the neural correlates of habituation and sensitization in greater detail. Functional magnetic resonance imaging. fMRI studies have shown that repeated exposure to stimuli can lead to decreased activity in areas like the amygdala and increased activity in regions involved in executive control, such as the prefrontal cortex. This suggests that habituation is associated with a shift from automatic emotional processing to more controlled cognitive processing. In addition, researchers have also explored the role of individual differences in habituation and sensitization, such as personality traits like neuroticism or extroversion. For instance, individuals high in neuroticism may be more prone to sensitization, as they tend to experience stronger emotional reactions to stressful events. Understanding these individual differences can help therapists tailor their approaches to each client's unique needs and circumstances. In conclusion, our exploration of habituation and sensitization has revealed the complex dynamics at play in our minds as we navigate the world around us. The key takeaways are clear. Habituation is not just about getting used to things, but about our brain's ability to rewire itself in response to repeated experiences, while sensitization is a powerful force that can amplify our emotional reactions and influence our behavior in profound ways. By recognizing how our brains respond to different stimuli, we can take steps to manage our emotions, build resilience, and develop more adaptive coping mechanisms. In everyday life, this might mean being more mindful of our exposure to stressful or traumatic events, seeking out new experiences to promote habituation, or practicing self-compassion when we find ourselves sensitized to certain triggers. And so, we're left with a profound question: what happens when we find ourselves caught between the comfort of familiarity and the thrill of the unknown? Do we allow ourselves to become numb to the world around us, or do we lean into the uncertainty, embracing the complexities and challenges that make life worth living? That's all for today's Psych with Sigmund. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, may your ego find balance between pleasure and reality.